So just get comfortable to begin with, and let's close our eyes. And in that space, just nice, slow breathing, just becoming conscious of our breaths. And if you have thoughts, just allow them to be there, but then just slowly return back to your breath. Our breath is the most elemental, simple, and in many ways profound mantra. A mantra just being a sound that's designed to bring us back to the quietness. So we're speaking today about living in truth versus constantly feeling we need to be somebody who we're not. We use the movie Aladdin as an example of Aladdin's first wish to be made into a prince in order to gain the princess's hand, who otherwise he believes he would not be able to marry because he's just a street boy. And she has to marry a prince. So such a wonderful movie in such a humorous and unforgettable way, and almost unnoticed way, sharing about this profundity that there's a lot of gray area, as the genie would say, a lot of gray area when we're trying to be something that we're not. Gray area being room for things to go wrong. Whereas when we're living in truth, we don't have to think nearly as much. When we're trying to be something we're not, we're straining. Our brains are firing continuously, trying to figure out what we need to do to maintain that lie, that myth that we've created for ourselves of who we need to be. Whereas when we're living in truth, which doesn't mean that we're going around offending people, that's lower truth, speaking our lower truth, which tends to be divisive, tends to be confrontational, creates separation. But living in that higher truth creates harmony, creates cooperation, collaboration, acceptance, love, grace, faith, compassion, gratitude, all beautiful qualities of that, living in that higher truth. And when we live in that higher truth, just as we're doing now, we have a lot more silence inside of ourselves. We're not pulled in 1,000 different directions because we believe we need to be this or do this or have that, or we're in fear of this person will say that. So there's this beautiful simplicity to living in truth. And the genie said this wonderful line, I wrote it down. The more you gain by pretending, the less you have. The less you have of truth, the essence of who we are, the divinity, the aspects of the Creator that we all have inside of ourselves, the sons and the daughters of the Creator that we are. Having to prove ourselves to be something else that we're not is living in fear that we're not enough, that somehow or another, the way the Creator made us, which ultimately is to say the way we've made ourselves, the choices we've made, the path we've chosen, whether we've chosen the path of listening to our heart or not, but that is not sufficient. Living inner-directed is not sufficient. And when we don't hear those whispers, when we don't listen to those whispers, then what we're listening to are the loud voices, the loud messages from television, from commercials, from politicians, from teachers, from our parents, from our friends, from our own family, even those who may be coming from a place of love, but if they don't accept us for who we are, and ultimately people don't accept us for who we are when they sense that we're not solid in who we ourselves are. So the way the universe works, it creates a mirror that when we're not sure of ourselves, we have some teachers come along who try to pull us away from being who we want to be. And if we give in to that outside force, then we haven't yet learned the lesson. Yet if we're sovereign, if we're self-actualized, as we're discussing today, the term of Abraham Maslow, famous psychologist, Wayne Dyer, a student of his. If we're self-actualized, which is to say enlightened, ascended, so many words for it, autonomous, another beautiful word that's user-friendly. Then we're enough. We don't need, here's the thing, we don't need anybody else's approval. That beautiful phrase, we are independent of the good opinion of others. The good opinion or the bad opinion. We don't need their good opinion, and we're immune to their bad opinion. So of course, when people are critical of us, it's hard to not be at least a little bit reactive. The better we get at this, the less reactive we are, the less we're swayed, the less we're triggered. And yet having this human form, starting from childhood, having parents who may not have supported us, having parents who made us feel unworthy, or even the opposite, having parents who were too good, or when we got out in the world and the whole world didn't act the way our parents did, we didn't have the muscle built to maintain our self-esteem. So there's all sorts of ways that our childhood could affect us. And yet it's all based on smoke and mirrors, an illusion. Because all along, all we have to do is stand in our own power. Just let go of the past. It's meaningless unless we've given it meaning. It's easier said than done. I realize sometimes people can go through, personally, I had a blessed childhood, blessed parents. Not perfect at all, but others have gone through much greater trials than I've gone through from a standpoint of parents. Parents could be physically abusive, emotionally abusive, sexually abusive. And so what happens, our nervous system creates these synapses that make it harder to let go because there were more things triggered. All of us remember where we were when 9/11 occurred. If you were alive when JFK got shot, we all remember where we were when JFK got shot, when we heard it. I think I was just 3 or 4 years old, but I have this memory of seeing things from that time on television. And I don't remember a lot. I'm not one of those people who have a good memory of my early years. And yet those memories are outstanding. So what happens, the more emotional the event, the more synapses are triggered. The synapses are triggered in our temporal lobe, our hearing. It's triggered in our frontal lobe. It's triggered in our occipital lobe through seeing. It's triggered in what we feel. It's not just words sometimes. And ultimately, the memories are not just words. They are actually alive electrical impulses inside of you. That part of our journey here in realization of the vessel, the divinity of who we are, is in letting go those things. We don't usually do it all in one huge step, we desire it and it's gone. No, we do it a little bit at a time. We go into the quiet. We see how that past reality is getting reflected in our current circumstances. What's triggering us? That's the first step, becoming conscious that, hey, somebody's judging me. And if we feel somebody's judging me, it's only because we have self-judgment. He, she who is sovereign, who is self-actualized, is independent of the good opinion of others. It's sort of an idealized state to a great degree, but it's a state that we can work towards. We first recognize when, hey, I'm not being independent of the good opinion of others. I feel I'm being judged. So from that perspective, all judgment is self-judgment. Because if somebody is judging you, but you don't have a trigger, it's kind of like lightning striking in midair, or lightning striking dirt versus lightning striking metal. It strikes metal and there's all sorts of sparks that go flying everywhere. So if their words, yes, they could be judgmental, but if it doesn't hit anything inside of you, there's nothing for it to bounce off of. Then it's humorous. You can just smile. It's just the most appropriate response to not a malicious smile, but a kind smile, a humorous smile. And one of the easiest ways to get somebody to back off on their judgments or their criticisms is just smiling. Not pretending to be immune to it, but actually realizing, hey, this is this person's issues. But I can make them my issues if I believe them. And I believe them when it bounces off of past events from our childhood and all the things that just keep getting layered upon layer on top of that from the events that occur from not having broken free from this illusion that we're not worthy of being who we are, of living in truth. It's so simple. And yet it's it's not so simple at all. It's something that we have to be very diligent about and vigilant. Constantly, for me, every morning I wake up, I look at where was I less than that divinity? Where was I in judgment of others? Where did I feel they were in judgment of me? Where was I in fear rather than living in trust? Where was I forceful rather than just allowing and doing things one step at a time? Where was I in expectation as opposed to being in the now moment? Where was I in any sense of entitlement rather than being in gratitude? And by becoming conscious of it, we make the choice to turn off that lower vibration, to turn off that need to be somebody who we're not, and instead to realign with that higher truth of who we truly are beneath all the smoke and mirrors, the illusion of, quote, reality. That's really just a lower level reality. That higher level reality being when we just let go the need for others' approvals, when we let go consciously one little step at a time. We all have burdens we have to let go of, all have things we've been through. We let go one at a time. Today we let go maybe 1%, maybe even 0.25%. But the more you're conscious of it, the more you let it go, the more you let it go. The more you don't need to be somebody who you're not. People who, quote, need to speak their truth, it's because it's not sufficient to have that truth inside of them. They have to prove themselves. They have to get others to agree, so they go into that domination mode. It's a form of low self-esteem, just as being passive and being in fear of speaking up for yourself, or that higher road, that higher level of sovereignty, self-actualization, ascension, enlightenment, is not needing to respond, but just doing what you need to do. That this person, it's inconsequential what they think. And in the times where it is, as in the case of repression in a relationship, by a government, well, at the appropriate time, we were meant to stand up. We're given clues when that appropriate time has been reached. But the far majority of times, the chains and the bonds and the shackles that we feel, the limitations, the far, far, far majority of times are just products of our own imagination, buying into this reality that anybody can have any control over us. 99% of the time. When we're children, we get more scarred. We have those scars because our parents do have control over us. Other people have control over us. We don't have those facilities, but as adults, part of our journey here as the divinity, the God that who we are underneath it all, is to learn to let that go. We have choice to hold on to it or let it go. We have choice to either continue to suffer the abuse, to speak our truth, and if they don't listen, to leave. We weren't meant to stay in abusive situations. So living in truth in our context is living in higher truth, not the lower truth of needing to continually tell other people the way it is. Our actions, as the saying goes, speak louder than words. Our silence, our beingness, speak for us. And the world will mirror that back. Just pay attention to your breath once again, and just let's enjoy a few moments of silence, because ultimately living in truth, being that sovereign being, actualized, enlightened, ascended, is just a lot more silence inside of ourselves when we touch those states and begin living in them more and more. So let's just stay in this place just for a few moments. And again, just breathe in and out as you need to, and when you find your thoughts roaming too much, you can just focus back on your breath. I'm going to let everybody just stay there, and I'm going to say good evening to everybody, and just stay there as long as you want. Enjoy that silence. The more you do this, the more you practice silence. Oftentimes I'll turn on my little timer on my iPhone just for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Just culture our nervous system towards that silence. The only way to do it is by practicing, doing it. Okay, well, we'll see you all next week.